In today's video, we're going to be talking about something incredibly relevant and incredibly important if you are wondering how to successfully do a transformational therapy process, do some sort of trauma healing, or use psychedelics for your own kind of transformational healing. What I'm about to share here is of critical importance for you to understand, and is a really important discussion that I don't see being talked about enough online, whether it's here on YouTube or, the various other places. And so I wanted to just kind of, put a fine point on it and offer my thoughts about the relationship between speed and safety inside the context of psychedelic therapy and why it's so important to understand this clearly. So let's talk about it. Okay, and just really quick, please do me a favor. If you like this kind of content, help me grow the channel here. I do want to get the message out to more people. I do want to kind of share these ideas. I think that where I'm coming from with this is valuable, is unique, is important. So if you like this content, please do me a favor and, give a thumbs up to let the algorithm know I'm here and that you resonate with it. If you really resonate with it, please consider linking it, sharing it to a friend or on a forum or what have you. And also, if you like my delivery, you like my way of thinking, you think this might be helpful to you, consider subscribing to the channel. It's always wonderful to have more subscribers here for the conversation. So all that out of the way, enough said, let's go ahead and get into why speed versus safety is so important to understand when it comes to this. Okay, so this is kind of one of these core, deep, big topics. And if I'm not careful, I could let myself yammer on and on about it. I know this might end up being a long video, so I'm going to do my best here to try to keep everything succinct and tight and on point, because I know this is a video that there may be some of you who are new or curious about psychedelic therapy might be coming this video. You may not have a lot of bandwidth for a long ass video. So I'm going to try to strike a balance here and convey the important points without getting super lost in the weeds, as sometimes I'm prone to do. So let's start the conversation here. It's important to understand, some people know this already. Some of you already get this. Some of you have heard this and don't want to agree with it. Some of you have never really thought this thought. It's important to understand the following. In life, pretty much universally across the board, trade-offs are a thing, right? There, to a certain degree, there's always going to be a balance between optimizing for different things in life. And this is just part of dealing with the physical limitations of reality itself, okay? So we have to understand that fundamentally there are trade-offs all over the place. And this is true also when it comes to therapy and transformation and healing and psychedelics, right? And so I want to convey to you here and frame from the beginning here with you that when we're talking speed versus safety, there is a trade-off relationship going on there. This is why I'm bringing this up. So I want you to really get that this is the deal, okay? This is something I want you to think about. I want you to watch the whole video here and understand the points I'm about to make and really weigh out for yourself what feels right, okay? I hope to be clear about the whole thing and all my thoughts about it and, how I see all of this fitting together. So with all that being said, without further ado, let me start to talk a bit about speed and my thoughts about speed with change and healing and transformation, psychedelic therapy, give you my thoughts on that and, kind of the pros and cons of that. Then we'll talk a bit about safety, and then we'll kind of try to tie together some of the understandings on the back end of that. So let's talk about speed. So if you're watching this video, there's a really good chance, of course, that you perhaps are new to psychedelic therapy or trying to understand it. And perhaps you have a lot of issues or you've been struggling for a long time and you just want to fucking be done with it. You're just over it. You've been suffering really deeply, or you've been just suffering so long, or something's happened in your life where it's finally become unbearable and you're ready to deal with it. And I think that's a beautiful mind state to be in, actually, as painful and as hard as that can be. So speed, of course, kind of gets built into our drive to want to solve problems and resolve issues and put the shit that in the past, right? But there's some things we need to know about speed, right? So what I notice a lot is when people come to me or when people are new to psychedelic therapy, speed is the implied desire there. They want it intensely. They assume that this can be done fast. This is the right way to go. And there's a bit of a push for speed. There's a bit of urgency, a bit of neediness driving that speed. And there's a bit of kind of a sense of, maybe if I move through this quickly, it might be really intense, but it'll be done and it's more tolerable. And I don't really have to get up close and personal with the shit that I don't want to get up close and personal with, if we're being honest here. So that's all there in the background from what I observe a lot of the time. Here's what's interesting to me. I come from a background of hypnotherapy and NLP, neuro-linguistic programming, is my primary, most developed sets of tools and trainings that I've done. I've done trainings in, a bit of somatic therapy, in understanding, trauma and trauma therapy, and understanding other ways of working with people, just coaching, life coaching, which is separate from NLP and hypnosis. But the thing about hypnosis, why I'm bringing this up in NLP, is they really kind of sell a lot of those ideas on the back of rapid, powerful, deep change. In other words, it doesn't have to take a long time to get over your shit. You can heal quickly. You can very swiftly heal what it is that you need healing. So I come from a background of being trained in how to do that. I also come from a background of tinkering with helping people through very fast methods, right? So this is something I've played with, I've tried on, I've certainly, used with myself. And so that's kind of been loaded in my set of assumptions of how to work with people for a long time. But what I've been finding recently is that there's a lot of reasons why emphasis on speed can really bite you in the ass and really work against you in the big picture, and especially when it comes to psychedelics, is maybe not the right way to think about it, especially when it comes to transformation, trauma healing, deep. So, I haven't dealt with my shit for 40 years and now I've got to deal with all of it kind of stuff, right? So let me just highlight a couple other ideas here, then we'll pivot over into safety. So one of my major concerns, one of my major kind of critiques about an emphasis on speed is that this way of thinking, as I kind of just alluded to a little bit ago, when people are kind of new to this and they're kind of implicitly want this drive to like, let's go, that is trauma thinking in and of itself. So one of the things a lot of people don't understand when they have trauma is that there are certain patterns of perception and certain patterns of ways of thinking. For example, black and white thinking is a very common trauma response, right? There are other things like that, but another one of these is this emphasis on fix it quick, right? And, if I'm going to be frank here, I see this a lot, especially with men. So the guys that come to me and want to work on stuff, almost invariably, they want it fast. They're like, they think of it like, I just want to, move the things around that need moving, deal with it, fix it, I'm done, right? And that's a very kind of dude way of thinking about things, if we're going to be honest, right? So I want you to recognize, first of all, if you have this emphasis on speed, that in and of itself is trauma thinking. And there's a certain flavor of avoidance inside of that. There's a certain flavor of, I don't really want to get up close and personal with my wounds. I don't really want to get up close and personal with the parts of me that I'm angry with, or, why do I still feel like a child and I'm in my 40s, or what have you, these kinds of things. I don't want to get up close and personal with that. I just want to be done with it. I just want to fix it. I just need to solve this, right? And that is... There's vigilance in that. There's fear in that. There's nervous system fight or flight activation in that type of thinking, right? That kind of rushed, manic thing is in and of itself trauma thinking. And I want you to really get that. I want you to get how if you're thinking from trauma, you're not thinking clearly. You're not seeing properly. You're letting your wounds inform the way you relate to something. So one of the tricks before you can even really properly make sense of this process is to get outside of trauma thinking. Part of that begins with what we're doing here, which is understanding trauma thinking and identifying it as such. The other thing about speed here is that what I've seen over and over, and I've had clients who have done this and then they come to me to help them with this, so I know this firsthand, is a lot of times when we put speed first, I want to go deep and fix it, we go too deep, too fast, more than our nervous system is ready for processing, and we end up overwhelming ourselves. We end up like seeing things we weren't ready to see, or literally our nervous system just has this huge wave of dysregulation and fight or flight and stress, or we get super numbed out and super dissociated for an even longer stretch of time, and it can slow us down, right? So this is one of the other major things about speed. If you're thinking of it that way, if you make any mistake, not unlike, really, if we think about it, not unlike if you're driving super fast in a car that's optimized for speed, like a race car, right? If you're driving in a car like that and you hit any little bump in the road or any rock or anything that's not supposed to be there, it can screw you up. It can be a crash. It can be like a complete derailment of your ability to progress, right? So it's the same thing here. A lot of times speed ends up working against you and actually slowing you down. And then you end up taking way longer to unscrew up all the stuff that just got stirred up and screwed up than if you had just simply worked a little more safely and a little more evenly and had a little more patience along the way. So these are some of my thoughts about speed. I understand that the drive there, I respect it. I respect the need to be done with it, and heal and grow and have some hope and have some optimism. And what I find, if I'm going to be totally transparent with you guys here, is that a lot of times once people just start to get in the work a little bit and feel progress happening, even if it's not the rate they first imagined it would or that they optimally desire, that felt sense and perception of progress usually is enough for most people. Usually what I hear more often than not is, we're not going as fast as maybe we could or maybe as I'd like, but this feels really good just to know that I'm progressing and moving forward, and I feel really content and I'm really happy with the progress that is happening. So that's great. And generally that's more the spirit that I hear from people. So I would offer you this idea up front so that if you're really bent on healing quickly, that you can start to think about that and go, yeah, if I was getting some sort of progress, would I necessarily be so hung up on having all of this processed all at once? So I think that's a reasonable question to ask yourself. Okay, so let's talk safety now. So what you might be gathering from what I just said about speed is that these days, even though my training is based in getting fast results for people, fast change, fast transformation, my emphasis, what I've really learned, is slowing down and emphasizing safety is so much more of a win and so much better. And really where my head is at these days when I'm working with people. So especially if we're talking deep transformations, deep core wounds, trauma therapy, letting go of a lifetime of chronic anxiety or ongoing depression, these kinds of things, safety over speed is everything. Okay, so there's a bunch I want to say about safety, but here's the first thing to think about, right? So since, like I was just saying, a lot of the people who seem to emphasize speed tend to be guys. If you think about it, most guys understand that if you are, say, repairing a car or you're on a construction site, where there's big, heavy things that can fall on you and hurt you, or any sort of situation where you're doing something really risky, the cliche, the like comical refrain you'll hear over and over and over is safety first. Right? We know this. We know that when you're doing something potentially dangerous, the way to do it well is to put safety first until you really know what the hell you're doing. And then, even then, and generally when people really know what the hell they're doing, they still put safety first. And then you do as much work as you can inside of that mindset of safety first, of really making sure all the things that are critical are taken care of, right? Why would it be any different with trauma therapy and with healing and like with a deep personal transformation process? Like, it doesn't make sense, does it? Right? To that point, when it comes to safety, really what we should do is be looking to the people who do the deepest, most challenging work, which debatably, in my opinion, at least one pocket of that is trauma therapy. Now, in the trauma therapy world, there are a lot of different schools of thought and techniques, but generally it's understood. If you study trauma therapy and you look at things like somatic experiencing, for example, which I kind of recommend you do if you want to understand more about the process of healing trauma, there are principles there about how to go about doing this work to optimize for safety, right? And so the whole trauma therapy space is really focused around and really deeply embedded in an understanding of creating safety for the client as being key and critical. Now, I'll be doing another video about the role of secure attachment and safety in healing. That'll kind of unpack this more, but let me just kind of give you the punchline here, which is that safety isn't just important for its own sake, which is to make you feel good or to be all touchy-feely about it. It's literally the key that unlocks your ability to change. In other words, when we don't feel safe in our skin and our nervous system, we tend to close up, we tend to shut down, we tend to shut off, we tend to be more resistant, we tend to be more non-compliant, we tend to be unwilling to collaborate, right? Either with ourselves or with others, right? If you think about a really scared animal, if you want to get a scared animal to do something, you can't, double down on making it afraid. You've got to coax it with a sense of safety, with a sense of everything's okay. Hey, work with me here, right? You're an animal. It's no different, right? And so this is really important to understand that the safety side of things isn't just about feeling good. It is literally prerequisite to unlocking what it is that you want to unlock and moving and changing what it is that you want to move and change. So that's important to understand. I think it's also important to understand that with safety, what that means usually is that you have to put more work in up front. And this, in my world, means more coaching sessions, more hypnotherapy sessions, more kind of sober work, kind of towards a therapeutic kind of side of things to develop a vocabulary and an experiential felt sense of what safety is and how to generate that in yourself, right? Now, it's actually not as hard as it sounds, and it's actually a really enjoyable process when people start to discover their own safety and how to create that with themselves and for themselves, or feel that, with me holding a certain kind of safe space with them. It's amazing. It's really cool. But for a lot of people who only see the medicine, who are only looking at, it's the MDMA that's going to make me feel safer. It's the psilocybin that's going to help me open up and process the trauma. What they're not seeing when they're thinking that way is that, this work up front is actually a lot of the trauma healing and where a lot of that foundation and legwork is being done. So safety, yes, means slowing down. But it also means doing a lot of sober work up front so that your nervous system's ability to deal with more powerful states, let's say, with the medicine, becomes easier, right? So then when we bring the medicine into the session and you do a medicine work session, now it's not, you're white knuckling it. Holy shit, how do I deal with this? And I'm just sitting there like, while you flounder and struggle through it, which is quite frankly what a lot of psychedelic therapists do. They don't really work on developing capacity with their clients. And then they just like, okay, yeah, let's talk about this. Okay, that's what you want to work on. Boom, here's the medicine. Okay, you struggle through it. I got you if you need me. And then let's unpack that and integrate that, right? I would way rather help people to set that up on the front end with a lot of development of the nervous system and a lot of, learning how to feel and return to safety. And that gives you way more ability to work with the medicine and work with yourself. You'll know what to do more. You'll also know that I'm there and you'll know how to recognize safety signals from me, but also, it just helps you to tolerate the different things that the medicine can bring up a lot more easily, right? So it's more work up front, but it's worth it because the sessions go so much more smoothly, right? There's less of these big, overloading, overwhelming experiences. I mean, you still get down to some really deep, powerful stuff, but it flows through. It doesn't kind of like hijack you and overwhelm you and get stuck in you in the same way necessarily. generally speaking, once you start to get a sense of that, then the path is, it's like you're on greased rails. You're just gliding along. The rest of the path from there, once the safety is in place and understood and returnable, and it's an element that we're working with now as kind of the foundation or part of the container, then the work moves way more smoothly, way more easily, and the depth where you can go becomes much more meaningful. So safety, I think, really is kind of everything with this work, and more broadly with human beings in general. This is one of the big messages that I'll be sharing on the channel a lot. I've already shared a lot, and this is why I'm talking about attachment all the time and the importance of attachment. And people don't see the connection yet, and I have a lot of work to do to explain this. And this is really like a larger message that I want to share on the channel here as a change worker or thinker about healing and growth and personal transformation. Safety as a core understanding of what it means to be a human being, that really is right there at the center of things. And it really is for everything across the board. So for all your relationships and for all the things you want to achieve in life and all the ways you want to grow and all the outcomes you want to have and safety is really at the heart of all of that. So as much as this might sound like an uncool kind of conversation, it's really crucial to really understand and integrate. So let me share a little bit more about some of my other thoughts, but hopefully that kind of makes sense why safety is so important. So here's another thing about speed that I forgot to mention that I think is really, really important that a lot of people don't realize when they're thinking, I want to move through all of this quickly, right? So if I haven't sold you on safety yet, maybe this will be relevant for you. One thing that people don't really realize about emphasizing speed is that when we are speeding through something, this essentially means relating to ourselves in a way that will be damaging, right? So whether that means ignoring and having blind spots to areas that need tending to and need healing or need understanding or unpacking or processing, or whether that means, you're going so fast that you're not mindful of boundaries that maybe you should honor with yourself, or that are things that are important relationally inside of yourself between different aspects of yourself. And you just blow right through all that stuff. You break your own boundaries. You go way too far. You push way too deep. You're too forceful with yourself. And all of these ways of relating, being dismissive and ignoring important things, which is essentially neglect, breaking boundaries that you shouldn't be breaking, being forceful inappropriately, all of these are traumatic ways of relating. When people often develop childhood trauma, these are often some of the ways that we're treated that traumatize us as children. So it's important to not reenact any childhood trauma that you've been through or any damaging ways that you've been treated, and maybe you've rationalized or internalized and been like, oh, that's what it is to be an adult, or this is how life is, that kind of thing. It's important not to do that with yourself, because if you're trying to heal yourself, but you're wounding yourself as you heal yourself, then what fucking good are you doing? Let's be honest here, right? And so you really want to slow down and be mindful and be attentive, because this is this increases the odds. It increases the chances that we're going to relate to ourselves in a way that's healing rather than damaging ourselves and working at cross purposes while we're trying to heal. That just makes no sense, right? So this is another reason why you don't want to emphasize speed. Okay, another reason that you don't want to work too fast and why you want to slow down and do this work properly is that, believe it or not, inside all the different currents of emotions and trauma and wounds and all the shit that you don't want to deal with, you may not believe it yet, but there's actually a lot of beauty and a lot of wisdom and aspects of you with natural capabilities and talents and understandings that are deeply beautiful and deeply meaningful and deeply valuable. Right? And if you are pushing yourself to just let go of the problem and you're going really fast, what you're not going to be recognizing and integrating along the way are all the profound pieces of self-connection, all the profound wisdom, all the profound talents and latent abilities that certain aspects of you may have been kind of holding off from, all the capacity to feel more or enjoy more or, expand and open up, or, all these profound, perhaps memories or communications or insights. There's so much there inside of this work that gets lost when you look at speed over connection, really, over, slowing down and doing the work properly. And so this is another reason why we want to put safety first and why we want to slow down and not really be about speed, is that there's so much reward in the slowing down. There's so much of the juice that you just got to slow down enough. The metaphor that's coming to my mind right now is I don't know if this is accurate, but it's almost like molasses or like, maple syrup or something. It's really sweet and really rich and really rewarding, but maybe it's a little slow flowing and you need to be kind of patient. That may not be a good appropriate. I think maple syrup actually comes out really quickly out of a tree and then it's boiled down to a thicker thing. But you get my point here. You want to really slow down to get the full meaning out of the experience. So that's another reason why. Okay, so I'm going to offer you kind of a cheesy cliche here. Pardon my referencing a cheesy movie quote, which I think actually comes from a real Navy SEALs principle here. But the idea I want to convey here about my kind of general thoughts about this trade-off of speed versus safety and why safety is the better choice is this idea of slow is smooth and smooth is fast, right? So you want to understand that when you slow down just a little bit and do the work, again, it smooths out so much more. And when we're doing something potentially dangerous and deep and complicated like trauma healing, this becomes highly relevant. And as that smooths out, then we end up going faster, and if it takes a year or a couple years to heal all your trauma, but you're progressing smoothly all along the way and feeling better and better and better throughout that course of that time, that is so much better than rushing it, kind of injuring yourself, re-traumatizing yourself, or not progressing at all and having that take 5 years, 10 years, or never fully resolving it. So I would encourage you to just embrace this idea. Slow is smooth and smooth is fast when it comes to healing, especially with psychedelics. And one final thought that I would just offer you guys about all of this, hopefully this is making sense and connecting for you and coherent. What I see over and over and over when I emphasize safety with my clients and we kind of go through the process and we are patient, we're connected, we're attuned, we slow down and deal with things that need dealing with, and we create this felt sense of safety for the person in their own nervous system. What I hear over and over and over is that they are so happy. They're so grateful that we slow down a little bit, that we put safety first, that we really emphasize this. And I hear over and over and over things like, this is the right way to do this. I'm so happy that I worked with you and that you slowed me down. Thank you so much for helping me understand what it means to feel safe and why that's important for my healing. I'm so grateful to have more of a felt sense of safety. And there's a lot of reasons for this. First of all, returning to safety is the healing in a lot of ways. That like in a certain sense, I'm kind of directly putting the real healing tool or piece that people need up front. I'm front loading it with a lot of my clients. And so even though they're not through all of their trauma issues and trauma patterning, they have all of a sudden a resource of safety, and that makes all the difference. Also, more often than not, the more we start to unpack, and especially once they do the medicine session and they see what it feels like to do a medicine session feeling really safe and working with this felt sense of safety, it really brings it all home. It's like, oh yeah, this is the way. This is so right. You know it when you feel it. And so I would just offer to you that, perhaps, you're watching this video because you're curious about this topic and you're like, yeah, I just want to deal with my trauma and be done with it. This is what I hear over and over and over, is that people are so happy that they slow down a little bit, that they decided to learn a little more about safe relating and developing safety in their nervous system. And it's clearly the bigger win. I've never heard anyone say, you know what, I felt like this was just too slow and really disappointing and I'm super unhappy and, you know, I feel like, you know, I just want to like push through it. I've never heard anyone say that after we've successfully gone through a round of sessions and really worked at this together. Safety is so at the heart, again, of unlocking your ability to open and move and transform and shift and change that you really kind of can't ignore it. And so that's really the message I want to leave for you here. So when we're looking at this trade-off here, personally, and again, I've messed with this. I've tried both approaches, and I've talked to a lot of other people who have too. I'd say it's worth that trade-off to emphasize safety over speed. But, you know, if you're still on board with speed, at least now you have another way of thinking about this, another way of looking at it, another way of understanding it and considering why maybe perhaps emphasizing safety is so valuable and so important. So enough said. I'm sure this is going to be a long video. If you made it through the whole thing, thank you so much for watching. I really appreciate all of you. And I have more content on the way for you shortly. So stay tuned and much love to you all. Take care.